Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another power-packed educational video on trading. So without wasting any time, let's get started. Today's topic is going to be a really interesting and it is something on trend lines. So for those of you who haven't watched my video on support and resistance, first and foremost, I would request you to go and watch that so that you will be able to understand this particular concept in a very better way. So before even starting what is the trend line or how to draw those trend lines, I would want you to understand this particular concept of swing high and swing low. Just focus on this particular level, sharp uptrend, then a pullback, and the sharp uptrend, then a pullback, sharp uptrend, again a pullback. Now, what I'm trying to search is the turning points because the market was going in an uptrend mode. It suddenly turned and it's a pullback. Again, an up mode, a pullback. Now, why I'm calling this pullback, you'll understand now. So first and foremost, I'll plot these particular swings. Okay, what I can see, this was the first high and this was the low. The second time when market ran again up, it made a new high which was higher than the previous high. So if you can just check this level, this is 22,800 and the previous one was 22,000. That's why I said the recent high that it made is even higher than the previous high. So we'll mark this as higher high 1. And after that it gave a pullback again. Now the low, this particular low is higher than the previous low. So I'll name it as higher low 1. Post that, again a sharp up move. Again it made a high which is higher than the higher high 1. So I'll mark this as higher high 2. The low that it made is even higher than the previous low. So higher low 2. That's the reason I'm saying now the market is an uptrend, because it is making a series of higher highs and a series of higher lows. Just understand, you should not take any smaller swings, like it should be right in your face. Like this is a swing, this can't be a swing, this is the swing, this is the swing, this is the swing. It should be right on your face. There shouldn't be no second guessing, or don't force any swing points. If you're trying to force it, then remember that it is not a swing point in the first place. Conversely, here what we can see, market was in an uptrend, it rushed down, then a pullback, rush down, then a pullback, rush down, then a pullback. Now every time the market is moving up, now I'm saying it's a pullback. Why? Because the overall trend has changed, because now the downturn is the major trend and these are just the pullbacks. Why? We'll first plot the swings. These are the swings. What I can see, this was the high, and if you can check, this high is somewhere around 44,163. The second high, which is this candle, I can see this is as 43,529, which is lower than the first high, and hence I'll name this as lower high 1. Meanwhile, when there was a sharp down move, this was the low, which was 41,597. So we'll name this as this was the first low. The second low that we get, it is almost near the first low. So we will just mark it as low 1. Now the third time when there was a pullback, market makes another high, but the high is only 43,100, which is even lower than the lower high 1. So I'll name this as lower high 2. The market again makes a down move, and this time the low is even lower than the L1. So I'll mark it as lower low 1. So now I know, and again the same thing keeps continuing. So what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to spot or plot. I'm simply going to plot all the lower highs and the lower lows, and then I can come to a conclusion that the market is in a lower high, lower low formation. Now here what we can see, market made a sharp up move, pullback, sharp up move, a pullback, sharp up move, again a pullback. Now here what I can see, if I just have to plot those swing points, then this is my low, this is my high, and this one is a higher high, slightly higher high 1, and the same lows, again the same lows, and this one is a lower high 1. But if you just look at technically, the highs more or less are in the same zone. If I'm not taking the exact levels, then can you see, if I'm considering this as a zone, then what I can simply see, market is making highs almost in the same zone and it is making the lows almost in the same zones, which means market is in a sideways mode or a range bound. What have we understood so far is there are only 3 variations. One, that the market is an uptrend where there is a series of a higher high and higher lows. Market could be in a downtrend when there is a series of lower highs and a lower low, or market could be in a sideways range or range bound or consolidation, which means similar highs and same lows. Now let's understand why to even draw trend lines. As I explained, it helps us to identify the texture of the market. Now, why it is important to know the texture of the market? It's because we have to align our trades according to the current texture of the market. Let's say the market is in an uptrend, which means the market is on a buy on dip mode. That means we have to align ourselves on buy on dips mode. Now, if the market is on a downtrend, it means it's a sell on rise mode. So we have to align our trades according to that. Also, just like support and resistance, trend lines can also act as support and resistance. And the moment a support gets taken out, then it becomes a fresh resistance. Similar thing can be noticed in a trend line. Also, a break of the trend line can signal a possible change in the trend. And I'll show you this with more examples on the charts. The last but not at all the least is how to time your entries and exits using trend lines. We are going to understand each one point of it in detail on the charts. Before even drawing a trend line, if we just have to understand what is a trend line or what are trend lines, I would just give you this example or an explanation that a trend line is a line that we draw on the charts that connects the swing highs and the swing lows during a trending market. In the previous example, what we saw that there was this low and then there was a higher low 1, higher low 2. And these swing points, if we try to touch with a line, this is called as a trend line. It basically connects the swing highs and the swing lows during a trending market. It helps us to identify in which trend the market is. Now I will also explain you what is the difference between a trend line and a support and a resistance line. So what are the basic rules to remember before drawing a trend line? First of all, you have to know your time frame in which you trade. Let's say you take trades basis 15-minute time frame. So then you have to set your charts on 15-minute time frame. Else, now let's say you are a higher positional trader, like you basically look on a higher time frame. Then if you're looking at 1 hour, then you have to stay on the hourly time frame, and so on and so forth. So first of all, know your time frame and set your charts according to your time frame. A trend line, a good trend line should connect at least, this is at least, okay, which means this is the minimum criteria. At least 2 major swing points. As we said, you can't find any small swing points. It should be right on your face. It should be major 2 swing points. And the third point is try to capture as many touch points as possible. And I'll explain this in much detail on the charts. Always focus on the left side of the chart, which means what has happened historically. So you have to zoom out your charts to understand the price action. The fifth and the last point is treat trend lines as zone or the areas, and it could not be just a line, just like a support and a resistance. Okay, in support and resistance video also we have explained that support and resistance are always zones and not a particular line. Similarly, trend lines can also act as a zone instead of just a line. Now let's go on the charts. So first and foremost, I have set my charts on a 15-minute time frame. This is Bank Nifty spot chart on a 15-minute time frame. So as per our this thing, how to draw trend line, the first and foremost thing that you need to know is know your time frame. So I am trading on 15-minute time frame. So I have set my charts on 15-minute. The second point is should connect at least 2 major swing points. Hence, what we will try to do, I'm taking this particular, can you see this trend line? You can go and pick it from here. Under this particular lines, the first one itself is trend line. Okay, pick this up. Now what I can clearly see is this is a swing point, this is a swing high, this one is a swing high, this one is a swing high. What I'm simply going to do, I'll pick this trend line and I'll try to mark this level. Okay, so what I can clearly see is the market is taking a resistance of this particular trend line. Now the third one is try to capture as many touch points as possible. Okay, so now let's go. Let's try to capture as many touch points as possible. So now what has happened, if you look this here, first touch point, second touch point, now I have adjusted my trend line. Why? Because I want to capture as many touch points on my trend line. So I can see here there is so many touch points. Although what I did, I actually broke this particular body a bit. But breaking, 2 to 3 bodies is fine. But it shouldn't be like, it can't be like your trend line is something like this. Because then it is not even capturing maximum points, plus it's breaking more bodies rather than touching. So remember that. Now what I'm trying to do is, see, 1 touch point, 2 touch point. For me, this one is a 3 touch point, 4 touch points. So I have got maximum touch points on this trend line. Now from this, what I can infer, every time what we mentioned, always focus on the left side of the chart, and I'll explain you that as well. See, every time you're focusing on the left side, what has happened in the past, your trend line will be even much more valid. Now let's say if I would have started from here, I would not have known from where this particular resistance is coming. Now because I have zoomed out my charts and I'm getting good amount of period in hand, so roughly I'm watching from 19th of February till 1st of March, so roughly half a month I'm watching on 15-minute 15-minute chart, which roughly translates to, I'll just take the count of this particular candlestick. Okay, so let's say I'm roughly taking, can you see, it's 200-300 bars that you will have to look for before even, you know, drawing a trend line. So remember to zoom out your charts. Now what I can see, every time the prices are touching this particular line, the market is getting, the prices are getting rejected. Every time it is touching, it's getting rejected. Every time it's touching, getting rejected. As I said, it can't be just a line. You can mark this as a zone. How can you do that? Just draw it parallelly, and this could be a zone. Now remember, this entire zone is your resistance zone. You can mark this way. Else, if you want to just go with, I basically draw a simple line, but you can always consider like these kind of zones to be more acting as a resistance. Now, the older this particular trend line becomes, the weaker it is. Why? Because the more it gets older, the more times it would have tested already. So what we can understand from here is that if I want to draw a lower trend line with the touch points, what I can see, I'm getting this kind of a trend line. I've got only 2 touch points here, but now what I can see, I can clearly see that the resistance has been tested several times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which means it's already tested 4 times, which means it is weaker now. So what I can do, I can take trades on two bases. First and foremost, let's say after these two points, I get this particular trend line. Now the moment prices come here and make some sort of a rejection at this zone, I'm just zooming this particular level in. So now can you see this particular, what can we see? We can basically see there is no strong momentum in these particular candles. In fact, the size of the candle, of the green candle, is becoming smaller as it approaches the resistance. It became almost a doji, then a doji, and then a doji, and then there was a reversal, and then there was a big reversal. You have to basically understand your price action on basis what you trade. You either trade on the basis of break of this particular doji, or you wait for a big sort of a candle confirmation and take trades basis that. But any which ways, by this candle you now know that this is a resistance, and you can start selling your futures, or you can start selling call options, or you can buy put options if you feel the market momentum will continue. As I am an option seller, what I would definitely do, the moment I get this kind of a rejection, I know I can sell calls with this high, or maybe the latest swing high as my stop loss. So this is one way to trade this particular trend line. Now the other way, so basically here we are talking about rejection from the resistance zone of the trend line. Okay, rejection from the resistance zone of the trend line when the trend line is sloping downwards. When the trend line is sloping downwards, it clearly tells you that the market is forming a lower high formation. This is the high, lower high 1, lower high 2, lower high 3, which means basically I have to sell every time prices reaches near this particular resistance. Now remember this line very clearly. I am talking this sell on rise when this particular trend line is a downward sloping trend line. The other trade which is possible here, now that I know by this day, let's say by this day, now I know that this particular trend line is very weak because it's already tested 4 times. What I'm going to do, I'm simply going to wait and see if it tries to touch us here again. There is no such momentum. Can you see here? Finally, I'm getting a good candle here, and it is breaking this particular trend line. Why it is important to break the trend, why it is important that I'm considering this particular break of the trend line is because now this particular trend line is pretty old and it's already tested 4 times. The more it tests, the weak it becomes. Okay. Now I'll wait for this particular trend line to break, which I got it here. Now for those of you who like to draw this particular trend line as a zone, for those of you, your trend line is still not broken, right? So you will wait and you get a clear confirmation here. If not this, then this one can be a very clear breakout signal. Although you are getting the breakout signal here itself at 11 a.m. So now what you can do, now you can be very sure that the trend has changed. What was the trend earlier? The trend earlier was basically lower high, lower low formation, which means you are basically doing sell on rise. After the breakout of this particular trend line, you can be very sure that the trend has changed and now you have to do buy on dips. Or for a option seller like me, what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to short puts at this particular breakout level. Okay. And now let's look at the trend. Can you see this particular uptrend? You can basically try this out on any chart of your choice, on any time frame of your choice. It could be even if you are trading currency pairs, you can go and test it out there as well. It will work same across asset classes. If you are trading into cryptos, you can go and check that it will work the same. If you are basically trading stocks, same thing will apply there as well. This is not a shocker because we know that the trend line was old and the resistance had become weaker because it was tested 4 times. And that's the reason we are getting a sharp up move here. Now we will definitely discuss how to, compute targets when it comes to chart patterns. But right now, today's focus is only on trend lines. Please be patient. We are going to cover all sort of concepts during the course of time. So, but just be very clear that you have to understand each and every concept perfectly before moving on to any other pattern. Now there is a sharp up move. Now in this particular up move, what you can clearly see that there is basically a upside, which means there is a higher low formation. Now if I have to draw a trend line, I need to have basic minimum 2 support points, right? I am not drawing, see, I can't draw a resistance because this one is the resistance, right? It makes no sense here as of now. But let's say if I want to draw this kind of a support, I can clearly draw this kind of a support. What I have got, I need basic minimum 2 touch points. I'm getting 1, 2 and 3 touch points. As I said, now that you know the market is an uptrend, why you know the market is an uptrend? Because this particular low is higher than the previous low. This particular low is even higher than the previous higher low one. Now you know, like maybe at this point, let's say you expect the market to go up because there is a small hammer formation with the confirmation. Now for those of you who don't know how to trade hammer, we have made a video on hammer series as well. So please go and watch those educational videos and make use of this particular holiday week. Let's say I take in a long position at this juncture and my SL gets hit. Now the next thing what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to wait. See, these are all the series. Now as I mentioned earlier, a trend line can be a zone. So if you just mark this particular as a zone, you can simply wait it out. Okay, this is where I get a confirmation that the trend line is taken out. Or let's say if you want to ignore this candle, the next candle, which is Monday 11th of March 9:15, you are getting a clear confirmation that the trend line is broken, which means now I have to take a reversal trade because it basically means the change in the trend. I'll just show you here. This is the point that I'm trying to break off a trend line can signal a possible trend change. Now remember this particular line. Break off a trend line means basically it's a possible change in the trend. The trend was basically buy on dips, right? Because it was making higher lows. The moment that this particular trend line is taken out, I now know I have to sell. So what I'll do, I'll try to sell calls about this. Now I have like marked this particular chart on a replay mode so that we can go and check what happens next. Let's go candle by candle. So sorry, I'll just, yeah, this was the level, I believe. Can you see this particular? It actually made a down move of this entire down move. In points, if you want to check, we'll do that as well. Okay, price range. Okay. After this breakdown, we actually got a 470 point down move. This particular trend line could be that powerful. And if you are not using trend line and if you add to your trading system, it could be a game changer. Now let's move ahead. Now what I have got, As I said, I have purposely done this so then we can basically test it out on the live markets itself. Now what I can see, it's basically a series of lower highs. Now I know, and the market is basically doing lower lows as well, which means I have to draw an upside trend line, because now I'm interested to do sell on rise. Else if the trend line gets taken out, then I will play for the breakout. I need basic two minimum touch points, right? So I got this touch point and this touch point, and I'm breaking here few bodies. That is perfectly fine. Whenever I'm going to draw a trend line, I'm going to extend it a bit. Now the reason for extension is I need to see, if the prices try to touch here, whether it is going to again take the resistance of this particular trend line. So let's move candle by candle. Okay, so by this level, now I know that I will. Now remember one more thing, you have to keep adjusting your trend lines every now and then. So every day evening you are going to come and you are going to adjust your trend lines. So then it should exactly try to match this particular zone. As I said, it could not be a line, it could be a zone. So if you're drawing this way, just the way we have discussed in support resistance video, a support and resistance is always a zone and never a line. Similarly, trend lines are always a zone. So if this is your zone, let's say if this is your zone, I usually draw a single trend line and I'm okay with breaking 2-3 bodies, because see, now the touch points that I'm getting is much higher. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I know that this particular trend line is very old. Now for those of you who have been watching our daily analysis video, I guess 2 or 3 days ago I had mentioned that this particular trend line is pretty old and we might see a break on the upside. The reason was only this way, because I know how trend line works. That's the reason I was betting on the upside, because this particular trend line is pretty old and this particular trend line, the resistance has been tested several times. Let's move ahead. So as I said, you can basically take trades the moment you can see some sort of a price action here. Now let's say here you get basically a dark cloud formation. And for those of you who don't know the chart patterns, just don't get overwhelmed. I am going to cover everything in detail. So you can basically take trades here. Else you can take a trade on inside bar. And I have made a video on inside bar also. If you want to go and check, please go and check, and then you know how to take trades basis inside bar. And this is an inside bar, and you can take trades just on the resistance. If you're getting a inside bar and the overall trend is downside, obviously we're going to take a downside trade, and this is how it will play out. Again here we are getting bearish engulfing or dark cloud hover. Again you can take the trade basis. So every time, it doesn't mean every time the prices touch this particular trend line you will take a short position. You have to wait for a confirmation. Like for example, let's say if there was this some sort of a resistance here as well, then I would have got a shooting star pattern. I have made a video on that as well. You can go and check that out. So at the resistance, if you're getting a shooting star pattern, you can obviously initiate a short trade. If you're getting a dark cloud hover, you can initiate a trade. You are getting an inside bar near resistance which breaks on the downside, you can initiate a trade there as well. So remember one thing, every time the prices touches the trend line doesn't mean you have to go short. You have to wait for the price action as well. So remember this, you don't enter trades blindly because price has touched the trend line. You always wait for the price action for the confirmation, and those price action could be a shooting star if you are taking the trades basis the touch of this particular trend line as a resistance. As I mentioned, the downward sloping trend line will always act as resistance. The upward sloping trend line will always act as support. So if you're looking at supports, then you have to try and spot bullish formation, and if you're looking at a resistance, you have to wait for and spot bearish formation patterns. Okay, so every time the prices touches a trend line, you always wait for a price action for further confirmation before taking the trade. Remember that. It is never like the moment prices touch the trend line, I'm going to take a short position. No, that's not how it works. It's basically a rookie mistake. So you have to be professional and wait for your setup to get activated near the resistances. Only then you initiate a trade. So coming back to the chart, as I mentioned, we will basically wait for those price action formation near the resistance. Moving forward, let's go and check what happened in this particular chart. I'm going to simply play the forward button. Keep extending your trend line every day. If you want to mark this particular zone, you can do that. Else, I usually basically draw this particular only one line, which I'll show you. I'll mark this in jet black. Okay. I usually basically draw one particular trend line. You would have seen it on my charts as well. Let's keep moving forward. Isn't this another trade that you can basically take basis shooting star? And let's go and check what happens further. Again, one more formation. It's basically an evening star. Please don't get overwhelmed. For those of you who do not know what these trading patterns are, we are definitely going to cover all these candlestick patterns as well as chart patterns in the coming sessions. So please wait. See now how beautifully this particular trend line is been respecting. And what I can see, it's basically a sell on rise because the trend line is downward sloping. And along with the lower highs, it's also making lower lows. So every time it is trying to touch this particular low, it's trying to bounce back. Bounced here, it bounced here, it bounced here, it bounced here as well. So two ways to take trade for those of you who are into scalping or who are intra-trade trading. What you can do, you can basically initiate a short position at the resistance after a price action confirmation. Near the supports, you can basically book out and take a reversal position. You can play this whenever the market is in a channel, and I'll explain what a channel is in the forthcoming sessions. You can initiate a short here, go long basis the hammer formation, again short here somewhere, now go long somewhere near the bullish engulfing pattern. Let's keep going forward. Okay, so now what we can see, now the prices are trying to touch here again. Now just count these points: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's almost 8 now. Okay, now we are just waiting patiently. Now we know that this trend line is pretty old, and it's this particular resistance is also weak now because it's already tested 8 times, which means now we can't be very casual about taking shots. Okay, so there was this breakout here at this particular, can you see this particular zone was negated here? This was the breakout candle, but for some reason this was basically an expiry, and that's the reason the market was volatile. Now leave aside, let's say you have taken a hit on this particular trade, that's okay, fine. Now what we are trying to see here, now just look at this. Now this is a very good candle, you can actually try going long here, and this is a fresh week for Bank Nifty. Now obviously what you will try to say that the market will definitely try to come because there is a gap or something. Now leave aside that, let's say, but you know, for some reason you know that this low or this particular 45,800 is somewhere the bottom, the near term bottom for Bank Nifty, then you can at least start going long with this as your SL, right? Which will definitely not hit. I'm talking from the perspective of a future trader or from the perspective of a positional trader, and I'm not talking from the perspective of an intraday trader. Now remember, this particular was acting, this particular entire zone which was acting as a resistance, now this will turn as a support, and I'll show you this by drawing a trend line only. I'll mark this in blue. Now this will act as a strong support, this particular zone, because erstwhile this was acting as a resistance. Okay, now every time the prices, if the prices come and touch here somewhere around 46,300, 46,200 zones, this will act as a strong support. Now the best part for you guys is that I'm basically talking about the chart which is yet to happen, right? We are today we are on 23rd of March, right? And this is the price action that happened on 22nd of March. So now whatever I'm saying that, you know, this will act as a strong support, you will basically get to know in the live markets itself. So the accuracy helps. Otherwise there will be always this question of, you know, yeah, come on Nikita, you are basically looking at those charts which have already happened. You tell us what will happen in future, right? So this is what I'm trying to explain you, what is going to happen in future, so that you can come back at and see what and how it played out. So now can you see the prices are staying very much in this particular zone. Now what we have to do, basically we will basically wait for the levels for that strong up move to happen in Bank Nifty, and we will definitely going to see that soon. Why I'm so confident? Because this is how support resistances works. Okay, we will definitely see how it plays out, and you guys, if you have liked this particular video so far, please do comment on the comment section. And I have shown you both historically how it has played out, and this is something that I am doing how it will play out in future. So if you have liked this particular video, then give a thumbs up, and for more such interesting videos, please do follow the channel. And if you haven't subscribed this particular channel so far, I would request you to subscribe to this channel as well. Before concluding, we will first and foremost just do a quick revision of the entire video today. So first and foremost, why to draw trend lines? Because it helps us in identifying the texture of the market. How? If at all we spot, first of all, we have to go and spot the swing highs and the swing lows. Now, if the swing highs are making basically lower highs, then we know the market is in a downtrend, which means we are getting a downward sloping trend line. If we are getting a higher high, higher low formation, it means the market is in an uptrend and we are getting an uptrending trend line. Okay, trend line and resistances acts as a support or resistance. So every time prices try to touch this particular downward sloping trend line, and if you get some sort of a price action confirmation on the bearish side, you can initiate a trade on the rejection of this particular price action. The break of the trend line can signal a possible change in the trend. That's the reason we will trade the breakouts as change in the change in this particular trend. The older the trend line, the better it works. Always remember that. And the more the times the resistance gets hit, it becomes much more weaker, and that's the reason it works better. So the moment this breaks, we are basically saying it's a change in the trend. Okay, now why it helps you? Trend line helps in timing your entries and exits. So all our examples, if you just see, I'll just take you to the chart again. So every time if you see, let's say this is the chart that I'm looking at right now, and I know so far it has taken 3 resistances, and right now the market is here. I'm getting this sort of a rejection. Can I take a short position here with SL as this one? Isn't my entry getting better? And now I know that this is the support. Can I just book my profits here? So that's how it helps us to take entry and exits in a better way. Let's go to the next slide. The condition, remember, this is the condition. You don't enter trades blindly because price has touched the trend line. You always wait for this price action confirmation. Let's say if you're looking at the resistance, you will look for shooting star and a confirmation. You'll look for bearish engulfing. You will look for evening star formation. These are the confirmations. Let's say you are basically looking at the support of this particular trend line. You look for hammer pattern. You look for bullish engulfing. You'll look for morning star pattern. Okay, which reminds me, I'll just show you, just because I just mentioned a morning star pattern, I'll just show you this particular chart as well. Okay, same chart, Bank Nifty. Let's go on hourly time frame. Now look at this one. This is our trend line. Okay, now we know the market has tested this particular trend line several times, and just focus on, for those of you who know candlestick patterns, for them it will be useful. Not that for those of you who don't know the candlestick pattern won't be useful, because I'll be covering in the coming forthcoming sessions. Just observe these 3 candles. Isn't this a classic morning star pattern? Now I will not say it's a exact textbook morning candlestick pattern, morning star candlestick pattern, but it is. Remember, in the live markets you will not get exactly textbook copy sort of a formation, but this is a very good morning star candlestick formation. It's a 3 candlestick pattern. So this 3 candlestick, if you look at the hourly, it's exactly formed near the supports, which again confirms the bullish biasness. So this is what I actually just recollected when I was basically mentioning the morning star pattern. So you always wait for the price action for the confirmation before taking that trade. Okay. Trend lines. What are trend lines? It's basically a line that we draw on the charts that connects the swing highs and the swing lows during a trending market. It basically tells you whether the market is in a sideways zone, or whether the market is in an uptrend zone, or whether the market is in a downtrend zone. How to draw a trend line? First of all, know your time frame and set your charts accordingly. I set my charts on 15-minute. You can basically set your charts on 30-minute or hourly, whatever suits your requirements. It should, a trend line should basically connect minimum, this is at least, which means minimum 2 major swing points needs to be connected. Try to capture as many touch points as possible, which means you will have to do frequent adjustments to your trend lines as and when the day progresses or as and when the price action happens. Always focus on the left side of the chart, which means you have to zoom out your charts. Roughly, you would require 200 to 400 candlesticks on your chart before drawing a good trend line. Now, treat trend line as zone or areas rather than just a line, which means just like support and resistance, even trend lines have a zone. This one is a very important thing, difference between a support and a resistance and a trend line. So for those of you who are still unable to understand what is the difference between a trend line and the support and resistance, it's very simple. I'll show you what it is. Now this is my support, okay? This is my support and resistance. This is how it works. This is my support so far, and this will act as a resistance, okay? This is the support, and this, let's say going forward, it's act as a resistance. Now remember, support and resistance will always have this 0 degree. This will always have 0 degree. But resistance and the trend line resistance and the trend line support, which means a trend line, if essentially will never be on 0 degree. It would be something minus or plus. It can't be 0 degree. For example, let me show you this one. Let's say this was our trend line. I'll draw this in black. Let's go on this particular angle. Is this angle? Now, since this one is a, lower trend line, which means downward sloping trend line, it's minus 26. And on the other hand, as I mentioned, this particular will always be 0 degree. Your support and resistance will always be 0 degree, and your trend lines will never be 0 degree. That's the reason those are trend lines, and supports and resistance will always be horizontal, no matter what. And trend lines will always be in some sort of an angle. So this is the basic difference between a trend line and a support and resistance. Hope you have learned something really new in this particular video, and I just hope that if you haven't been using trend lines in your trading so far, you just have to incorporate this particular trend line in your trading, and you would definitely see the difference. Do let us know on the comment section how have you found this particular video so far, and whether it is helpful for you, and whether you are going to incorporate this particular trend line within your trading setup. And if you have liked this particular video and you have learned something new, please consider hitting the like button, and we are going to see you soon with more such educational contents. I'm Nikita Pujari. Thank you very much for your time. Bye bye.